The college football season is right around the corner. Week 0 is kicking off next weekend, which means I got to get out my preseason top 10 teams. I'm not going to do a full 25. I don't want to give you the full list because, frankly, I think that those elongated lists, we tend to just throw extra teams on there to throw teams on there. However, these are the top 10 teams that I feel right now are the best in college football. One of them is very surprising. One of them I think a lot of people are going to disagree with. And as I go through this, make sure you hit those comments. Let me know where I'm wrong. Maybe a team that I might have missed, somebody that I should have included in there. I'm going to throw up on the screen my top 10 teams, and I'm going to break these down one by one. Number one, the University of Georgia. Why would I go against the Georgia Bulldogs as the number one team? I've seen some people to try and make this argument that Carson Beck, Mike Bobo are unproven. Well, I'm not that worried. Carson Beck is a former highly recruited kid. They've got a extremely dominant physical offensive line, and I know that they lost important defensive players like Nolan Smith, like Keely Ringo, like Jalen Carter. Those guys are generational type college football talents, but they're retooling with so many good players, underclassmen, as well as guys that saw important roles last year, like Michael Williams. Jamon Dumas Johnson is one of my favorite linebackers in all of college football. They're not going to take a step back whatsoever. Number two, and I've been super bullish on this team, is Michigan. It pains me as a Notre Dame fan giving recognition to Michigan. And for anyone who wants to use that against me on any of my other arguments, here I am picking one of Notre Dame's biggest rivals. But regardless, I see the most veteran laden roster in college football and in the Big Ten. I've seen some people on Twitter try to go out of their way to say that Michigan is losing a lot after this past season. I don't really see any holes on this team. They're bringing back most of their offensive line. Zach Sinter is fantastic. Both of their running backs are arguably in the top 5 running backs in college football and in the 2024 NFL draft. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards are unbelievably explosive. And when you have the open rushing lanes that they're handed, they're going to continue to pick up massive, massive gains. That's important for J.J. McCarthy, who I think is an underrated quarterback, one who made a number of important and critical mistakes last year, but with the ability to rely on his offensive line and the run game, and especially his explosive and stout defense, he doesn't need to do everything. And when you've got a quarterback who plays slightly above average, which I think that J.J. McCarthy will get to a more consistent pace of being slightly above average, Michigan will not be stopped in the Big Ten. At number 3, I've been shocked by how many top 25 polls have placed Florida State outside of the top 5. How are we going to do that? And look, I get it. They didn't win the ACC last year. They kind of tapered off a little bit, and in key games, they weren't able to get over the hump and beat Clemson. But we're making a decision here based on the team that is suiting up in 2023. Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson, and 5 offensive linemen that are going to be some of the best in the ACC. Offensively, this team was explosive. They went and added Keon Coleman. And then on the defensive side of the football, it's ridiculous some of the names that they were able to add. Fentrell Cypress, Braden Fisk, along with Jared Verse. That defense, to me, I see as the best in the ACC. So Florida State is my number 3 team, and I think is going to win the ACC when the season is all said and done. Number 4, LSU. I was racking my brain on this, and I was trying to decide how high I wanted to put LSU. And the more that I thought about it, the more that it makes sense for them to be placed as that second best SEC team. And in any year, the second best SEC team is deserving of being in the top 5. They also were another team that was very active in the portal. I am paying close attention to seeing how they take that next step offensively. Is Jaden Daniels the guy? Are we going to get more Alabama performances? Is he going to be able to string together more consistency? Or is he going to play like he did against Tennessee in important matchups? Again, active in the portal, and I love some of the things that Brian Kelly did, justifying them being at number 4, and again, being the second best team in the SEC. My number 5 team is a team that I honestly don't have a ton of confidence in. I'm not super confident in Ohio State, but I'm willing to justify why right now, going into week 0, going into week 1, they belong. They are another team that has a huge, huge question mark on how the quarterback position is going to impact their success. Is Kyle McCord somebody who can play at that CJ Stroud level the same way that CJ Stroud played in his first year? And we also have to remember it took CJ Stroud a couple of weeks to settle in. There was one point, and don't forget this, there was one point that we thought that CJ Stroud wasn't the guy. And then eventually he goes on to be a very highly drafted player and is going to be the face of the franchise for the Houston Texans. But I look at Ohio State's defensive line. I look at their linebackers. They have a really underappreciated defense. I think that we remember too much the way that they played against Michigan, and that's our last representation of what they are defensively. They bring back Tommy Eichenberg, JT Tuimoilau, Tyleik Williams, Michael Hall. That defense is great. I'm a little bit concerned on their offensive line and having to refill at 3 spots, the left tackle, right tackle, and center position. That remains to be seen if they have the guys that are going to be able to battle it out on a week-to-week basis in the Big Ten. But Ohio State, with those defensive players, and then also, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka. I couldn't ignore that for putting them at that number 5 spot. Number 6, USC. I know that some people are going to complain about this, that I didn't put USC higher. How is USC not 4 or 5? Well, if we only ranked their offense, they'd be a top 3 or maybe even 2 team. They have the best offense in college football. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that. But defensively, I still don't trust Alex Grinch. And it needs to be proven to me that all these new faces that are coming into this defense through the transfer portal will play significantly better than the haphazard group that was out there last year performed. So I put them at number 6. Number 7, Washington. Washington's another one of those squads that I just don't understand why they weren't sitting in most preseason polls in the top 10. The AP, the coaches poll, did not give respect to Washington. Washington right now has the best, and I'm not exaggerating this, the best returning production grade out of any team in college football. They bring back the most returning production on the offensive and defensive side of the football. I point to guys like ZTF and Braylon Trice on defense, and then on offense, they have the best offensive line in the Pac-12. Go look at this unit. Troy Fautanu is going to be a highly drafted player and has not been recognized accordingly. And the rest of the group is fantastic. It is stellar. And it was really good last year. And most of those guys, except for one, is coming back. Washington needs to be taken more seriously. 2 1,000-yard receivers coming back. And then Michael Penix is a dude. Put up stupid numbers last year, and he's going to put up even better numbers in 2023. Number 8, and I think this is one of my most controversial spots, putting Alabama at number 8. Too many of these early preseason polls were willing to place Alabama inside the top 5, even in the top 4. Can we stop ranking a team because of their head coach? I respect the hell out of Nick Saban. I respect him as the greatest coach of all time. But we need to be willing to admit that he is on the decline. He is not the same head coach that we are used to seeing. We can't just assume that he's going to figure it out. Oh, they've got issues at quarterback. We don't know who's going to play quarterback. Oh, this roster's covered with freshmen that are going to be playing important roles on this offense and defense. But it's Nick Saban. He's going to figure it out. This is one of the most worrisome rosters that Nick Saban has had. And again, last year was a down year for them. A year where they had the first overall pick and also then the best defensive player in the country in Will Anderson, and they lost 2 games. Why the hell would I pick them to be the 4th or 3rd best team in the country after they couldn't get the job done last year in winning the SEC and winning another national championship with a better roster last year, a better offensive coordinator, a better defensive coordinator? Things are not trending in Alabama's way. I will say this, though. For those that want to argue, oh, I'm completely bashing Bama and I'm saying that they're going to have a terrible season, putting them at 8th is the expectation that they finish with 2 losses. I think 2 losses is a reasonable prediction. I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to lose 5 games. I'm not that stupid. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But to lose 2 games is unlike what we're used to seeing in Alabama, but is what is going to happen in 2023. Still a good team, still the best coach of all time, but they need to be ranked accordingly. Number 9, Penn State. I've gotten some flack on this channel for my placement of Penn State, my predictions for Penn State and how they're going to do with their schedule. I think Penn State has some of the best draft prospects in the 2024 NFL draft. Olu Fashanu is a freakish athlete at that left tackle spot. Kalen King is my favorite cornerback. Chop Robinson's a great football player. And then Nick Singleton is so excited, not a 2024 NFL draft prospect, but is so exciting. And I would say maybe the most exciting running back in all of college football. But I'm not going to commit to James Franklin. This is another guy that's got to prove it to me. Penn State could be as good as finishing in the top 3, maybe even top 2. They can beat Michigan. They absolutely can accomplish that. But it needs to be proven to me first. Is this just another talented roster that James Franklin doesn't succeed with? I think 9 is a fair placement for them. And the number 10, here's one that I got a lot of shit for on Twitter. I went with Oklahoma at number 10. And I was looking at my reasoning for putting them there is analyzing who are some of the other options that make sense in this location. And the other teams that came to mind are Oregon, Utah. Does Clemson find their way here? And I think that there's a lot of good options in the teens. I think there's a lot of good football teams, but I think this year more than ever, we have a ton of uncertainty. And I think that Oklahoma has been unfairly judged based on the way that they played last year. Just because they finished 6-7 does not mean they can't turn it around in 2023. And for a team to turn around, you need some signs of positive progression. You need something to point to that shows this thing is getting flipped in the right direction. And I look at the way that they finished in recruiting in 2023, pulling some of the most talented defensive players in the country. And then also Jackson Arnold is going to be a fantastic quarterback in Jeff Lebby's offense. And then I also look at what they did in the transfer portal. It feels weird to say this in being a fan of college football, that success is now reliant on the transfers that you bring in. If you bring in a top 10 transfer portal class and you had holes and you fill those holes with some of the best players in the country by going and getting a Dasan McCullough from Indiana, who is a twitchy, explosive edge rusher who shouldn't have been in Indiana in the first place because he was formerly a 4-star recruit and just simply went there for family connections, for family reasons. And then Walter Rouse to plug into that offensive line, who apparently has been doing fantastic already during training camp. Those are just 2 guys that they got. They also got a ton of defensive linemen and just defensive bodies in general. And I think that Brent Venables lacked the types of players to successfully dominate teams on the defensive side of the football like we're used to seeing him do, like he did at Clemson. He's filling up this roster with the guys that he needs. And I trust Dylan Gabriel, if he is fully healthy and not banged up as much as he was last year, to get the job done on the offensive side of the ball. Oklahoma needs to be respected more for what they have and not remembered for the performance that they put up last season. Let me know where I'm wrong. Drop a comment below. Tell me where I'm wrong, and then make sure you hit that subscribe button because this season is going to be a wild one for 2023. Make sure you check out BetOnline for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50 to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.